Hello, everyone. For this lecture, we're going to talk about strategic alliances. So, when you consider supply chain and procurement, um, you can have an internal and external alliance, and both are equally important to becoming as much of an effective procurement organization as you want to be. There is a complexity in business that is growing in both the internal and external environments. And what this complexity is driven from is it's driven from the globalization. It's also driven how we go to the supply market, how we go to the consumer market, and this increasing complexity is requiring more and more resources to become efficient and hopefully effective. Um, and firms really need to make sure that the functions are being performed well by other firms when they are strategically aligning with outsourcers. Um, so when we look at four ways to ensure that the tasks are completed, what are our internal activities? These are activities that are core strengths that may best be done in house. Um, when you look at outsourcing, you want to outsource the things that are not your core competency. As far as acquisitions, this gives the firm that is acquiring, that is doing the purchasing of the service of the other firm, control over the way that the business function is performed. This can be very difficult, very expensive. There's also arm's length transactions. So most business transactions are this. This is a short-term arrangement, fulfills a particular business need. There's not a lot of strategic advantage in this. This could be something as simple as I need someone to build a piece of production equipment for me. I give them the scope, I give them the requirements that I need the finished piece of production equipment to do, and they do it as they see fit to meet my requirements. And then there's strategic alliances. So these are really deep, meaningful, goal oriented, strategic partnerships that are built for long term relationships between two companies. They're partnerships. This is not a supplier relationship that is adversarial. This is not a supplier relationship that is tenuous back and forth. This is a partnership, a mutually beneficial partnership. Both partners are going to share the risks, they're going to share the reward, and really they bring mutual benefit through the long life of the relationship. So, looking at strategic alliances, there is always going to be a buy sell relationship. The seller is going to involve their finance and marketing and operations and sourcing and information technology, information systems, and the buyer is going to involve those also. And oftentimes you won't simply just have the procurement person talking to the salesperson, but you could have operations from each side talking to each other. You could have marketing from each side talking to each other. This would be akin to if there was a very strategic relationship between Nike and Dick's Sporting Goods, and Nike and the marketing team at Nike and the marketing team at Dick's worked together on how Nikes would be marketed at Dick's and by Dick's. In a strategic relationship, you will have these same functions that typically will have counterparts, and they'll work together. And they'll focus on bringing value to the organization. You really should pursue strategic alliances when the organization that you hope to partner with will add value to your organization. They'll bring innovation, they'll bring products, they'll really, really help drive improvement. They can also open up market access. When a lot of people started sourcing in China, few realized that they could actually use this as a way to get in the Chinese consumer market. It's also a way to strengthen your operations by learning from them. Steel sharpens steel. You can build technological strength. You can enhance strategic growth. You can also enhance your financial strength because it is a mutually beneficial partnership. However, there is a downside. You run the risk of losing some of your core competencies or losing a competitive advantage. But you have to look at the greater good, the greater benefit of this. Three types of strategic alliances, what I would say are kind of the three main parts, is going to be your third-party logistics provider, which are very, very common. I think everybody uses one. People also use a fourth-party logistics at times. There's also going to be retailer and supplier partnerships, and then a distributor integration partnership. With retailer, supplier, and distributor integration more focusing on the actual flow of goods, whereas the third party logistics is actually the movement of the goods. So, what is a 3PL? This is a firm that provides outsourced logistics to their clients. It could include your transportation. So, look at your main channels of transportation: ocean, ground, air, rail. 3PLs could also provide warehousing. My company uses a 3PL that does transportation and local warehousing. Freight forwarding can help you with customs, importing, exporting, as well as cross-docking. If needed, inventory management. The text alludes to that 3PLs can conduct light assembly. However, I think, when you're looking at outsourcing, you want to outsource to companies that are doing things that within their core competency. And typically, most third-party logistics providers are not going to be light assembly competent. You could outsource that to a light assembly company or do it internally. I personally wouldn't do it to a 3PL. You could maybe have some kitting and packaging done by a 3PL, and definitely sorry about that. Have reverse logistics, the returns of your goods done by a 3PL. A 3PL is characterized by the strategic high-level partnership by having a long-term commitment, almost always being accompanied by some kind of commercial agreement. You're going to be multifunctional, so you may not choose everything from the list I just went through, but you're going to choose a few of them. You're going to have multiple ones because otherwise it's just a transportation provider or a logistics provider. And they're going to be process oriented. They're going to this is what we do, and we're going to do it the right way to bring you value. 3PLs can be asset based, so they own the logistics assets, and that's trucks, warehouses, IT equipment, scanners, or they could be a non-asset based 3PL, so they don't own the logistics assets. And then sometimes there's a special case of a 4PL that manages the client's own logistics assets or the 3PL's assets. So an advantage of a 3PL is the 3PL has the core competency of warehousing, of logistics, of transportation, and they're doing that for you. And I don't care how good of an organization you work at, how strong your procurement department is, how strong your logistics is. You're not going to be able to do it as well as a 3PL. The 3PL's business is logistics, transportation, and warehousing. They're going to do it better, they're going to do it more effectively, and they're going to do it cheaper. And they're going to save you time, they're going to save you money. They're going to give you flexibility because they have bigger networks. They can expand space temporarily to handle peaks and valleys or seasonal volumes so that you aren't going to maybe have to take a long-term agreement to get that. They can help you identify geographic locations, and oftentimes their workforce is going to be significantly less cost. Some of the disadvantages is you do lose control. There's always a loss of control in outsourcing, which is really why it's key to have the strategic alliance where you really trust the organization. Additional considerations is to know your own cost, really find a customer orientation focused 3PL, And just understand, do you want an asset base or a non-asset base? Do you still have your assets and you want them to manage your assets? So really, you really need to know the true climate that you have before you can pull someone in to manage it. So a 3PL is a complex startup. It spells out the scope, the scale of responsibilities. There's a conflict resolution process. So you really need to take that time to set the foundation right so that once you launch, there's as little interruption to supply as possible. You really need to work on a governance structure. How are you governing this relationship? How are you holding each other accountable? How are you making sure that key performance indicators and the terms of the agreement are being met? So you got to have strong communication, and you got to have really an integration, a connectivity between your firms. So electric data transfer protocols, you know, uh, electronic transfer, maybe full SAP or full ERP integration. Oftentimes, these 3PLs really like to have their own proprietary systems. Um, so, in the retailer supplier partnership, you want to have a quick response strategy where the retailer sends point of sale data to the supplier, and then the supplier uses that to synchronize and fill that order, meet those needs as fast as possible. You could also look at a continuous replenishment strategy. This is also called rapid replenishment, where the retailer sends a point of sale data to the supplier, and they come and the supplier's shipping based on this, maintaining the inventory. And the suppliers manage down inventory while maintaining a fill rate. And then there's vendor managed inventory. This is where the supplier can fully be responsible for maintaining the inventory at the retailer or at a manufacturing location. Um, and it really takes a lot of the burden off your team. You can have consigned inventory where the supplier actually owns the goods until they're sold. And then there's kind of like a quarterly true up where you look at everything that's sold and then it's paid. And then typically in these relationships, if there's a disputed volume or maybe if there's theft or shrinkage, it's split down the middle. Some pros and cons to consignment is, it is a lower storage cost for the supplier. The goods are positioned close to market. Cons is monitoring and reconciling inventory, like I just said, and then you have to resolve theft and damage claims. The customer, they do see increased quantity of the assortment of goods on hand without investing cash, without sacrificing cash flow to capital. That's a pro. However, the con is they're bearing the storage costs, they're bearing the inventory risk, they're bearing the administrative management of that. So, when you look at retailer supplier partnerships, so some of the requirements are going to be a presence of advanced information systems, especially if you're looking at consigned inventory. You really have to be able to be transparent through your data, and advanced information systems will help with that. Top management commitment, so you really need to have management on both sides fully aligned, and there needs to be a high level of trust. Suppliers are going to manage the customer's inventory. The customer is going to provide up to date data to the supplier, and hopefully this reduces inventory lead time. It reduces savings or spaces. It leads to savings in space. You're utilizing your square footage to better profit driving activities. And you must be confidential in this. You must be confidential. You must be transparent, and there should be no conflict of interest. As in all these relationships, contracts and agreements are very key. They need to be negotiated up front. They need to be mutually agreed upon. You need to make sure, as much as possible, you're not leading any resentment or building any tension in this. You need to understand inventory ownership, credit and payment terms, who bears responsibility in certain instances, and what are the performance measures that you're going to be graded on. Um, and when you look at distribution relationships, Distributors are very important in the supply chain. They have a wealth of information. They really can help with marketing. They can help get your product lines in front of consumers, and they're going to rely on manufacturers for expertise, just as they have expertise. So the manufacturer has this product expertise, whereas the distributor has the market expertise. And strategic alliances, you're going to have various types of partnerships that are needed across different industries in different situations at different times of the year or different seasons of your business. The framework that you are selecting must be most appropriate. It must be able to address the particular issue of your organization. 3PLs are becoming more and more prevalent, so I would encourage all of you to understand them, understand how they work, understand their value, both advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing the logistics function. There's just so many of each, so really understand your strategic mission when you're doing that, and then the partnerships, the retail seller partnership, the distributor integration, they're becoming more and more common. It's a way to minimize your risk. It's a way to have more product without impacting your cash flow. And they really all just bring a significant amount of value. So as you guys work through the material this week, if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out. Have a great day.